no idea how bad. Like I knew it was bad, but I had no idea how bad. I just had this belief that we could get through it. There was nothing that was going to stop us from succeeding. And I just believed it to my core. And the only way for us to do that was to have that energy of the entire team, was to have them believe in it too. And so I knew that we had the potential to rally around the crisis.
Welcome to the People Powered Solutions podcast. In this show, you'll gain expert advice and tips on building a thriving workplace culture with happy employees. I'm your host, Lorianne Duguay, and I'm thrilled to be spending this time with you today. Hello and welcome to another episode of the People Powered podcast. This week, folks, we are continuing that series. If you recall, the last we were with each other, we were talking to Trevor Muir, and he was sharing his inspiring story of just his journey from a professional standpoint. And in that journey, there were so many beautiful lessons and insights that he shared with our audience that we now have brought him back, a first time we've ever done this, to kind of do a two-part episode where we're going to continue the story, but through the lens of the company that, as you remember, for those who did listen to that episode, he initially created, along with, I believe there were 10 of them. I'll let him provide more insights. So welcome back, Trevor. Looking forward to hearing more about the Surepoint story and that company journey and how it ties in with your own personal journey. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me back again, Lori. This is great.
Awesome. So well, I'll let you jump right in. And how about you walk us through how Surepoint came to be what Surepoint is today?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about our company and our team. And last time we talked, in 2003, we started Surepoint. There were 10 of us. And we're all from a small northern community called Grand Prairie, a bunch of farm kids. And we came together to start an organization. And, we wanted it to be different. We didn't talk about culture. We didn't actually, I don't know that we even identified that we were building a culture. We just wanted to have a really good place to work. And we all worked hard. We showed up, and we had aspirations that one day it would potentially be 40 or 50 people. And we had 15 when we started, 10 owners, 10% each, and 15 people. And our first year, we got through our first year, and we decided we were going to do some strategic planning. And so we grabbed some beers and quads and went out in the bush and sat around a campfire. And we literally were talking, and we're like, well, we had done, I don't know, $4 million. So we said, let's do 8 million next year. And we went away and did it. And we actually continued that on for 3 more years, going back to the same place, hanging out, having some beers for a weekend, camping and quadding and stuff. And every year we doubled. And I remember the first year we thought, this could really blow up on us. It could be 40 or 50 people one day. And in year 2, we were over 40. And by 2008, we had grown our company to about 250 people, a little more than maybe. And we had an opportunity to sell to a private equity group out of the US. And so we did. We sold 60% of our company to this organization. And it was at a time, the oil industry was crashing in 2008, shortly after they had bought us, stacked on some debt, quite a bit of debt into our organization. And all of those things, were just things. And looking back on them, it was a really challenging time for us. But our company continued to grow actually from 2008 and on. And we peaked in 2012 around $92 million. And so we'd gone from $4 million to $97 million in a relatively short period of time. And the organization was growing, the revenue was growing, but the reality was it wasn't very much fun anymore. Culturally, we were starting to disintegrate. A lot of really good people were leaving the organization, and we'd hear a lot about things like, well, it just feels like nobody cares anymore. It feels like you don't care anymore. And I actually was planning on leaving the company as well. And in 2013, I had given 3 months notice. And was going to go and do something else. And about 5 weeks before I was officially done, I got a call from one of the board members. And I was over in Australia. We had opened a branch over there, and I was over talking to some of our folks there and saying to them, look, it hasn't been announced yet, but it's probably my last visit here, at least with Surepoint. And I got a call from this board member, and they said things aren't going very well, and there's some challenges in Surepoint. And I was like, oh no, I totally get it. And they offered me the CEO role, and I turned it down. I told them no, there was no way. I said I have another plan. I've given notice. They didn't realize I had. And anyway, flew back home and got home and went and chatted with my wife and said, hey, dear, they've offered me the CEO role at Surepoint. And she was like, absolutely not. Do not take it. I know what this means. I'm never going to see you. You're going to put everything you have into that. And I said, it's fine.
For context, Trev, just a bit of context. This would be kind of post reconciling, right? Because you guys had, because 2011 is when, right? If we want to relate it to the story. So this is where you had your life back on track. You understood what was important. You had been through the therapy, and you were in the process of kind of reinventing yourself in this new chapter. And so 2013 would have been on or around that time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point, Lori. A lot had changed in my life through that, and especially with my relationship with Renee. And so we were in a pretty healthy spot comparatively to where we had been, for sure. And so she really didn't want me to all of a sudden lose track or lose sight of I think what we were doing and where we were going. And so I told her it's fine. I said I've already turned it down. And a couple of days later, I talked to the board member again, and he asked me again if I would take it, and really encouraged me to. And I came home and told her, they talked to me again. But I turned it down. And she asked me something that night. She said, how will you feel if you don't take it? And I was like, honestly, I said, that's what I'm struggling with right now. So her and I grew up. We both grew up modestly. We didn't have a lot, but we always had enough, both of us. And when we got married, we had a good lifestyle because I could go and work and make good money. But the day that we sold in 2008, our lives changed. Myself and 9 of my friends, our lives changed financially. And we went from not having much to being financially secure. But 240 or so other people, their life didn't change, and they helped us get to where we got to. They had sacrificed a lot as well. And I shared with you, Lori, that I didn't feel really good. I was super grateful, but I didn't feel really good when the sale happened. I felt like we had missed an opportunity to do something to include some other people. And so I said to Renee, I feel like I have an opportunity or a chance to make a difference. A lot of really good people quit really good jobs to come to Surepoint, and many of them did because I told them we were different and better. And we were for a while, and then arguably we were worse at this time. And I said to her, I feel like I would be running away from my family and friends only because I can. And I don't know how I'll do it, but I feel like I need to try. And so we had a conversation, and the next day I accepted the role. And literally, I was an instrument mechanic who had grown, a fairly large division in central Alberta and gone international with it. But I was a tradesperson. I didn't have a lot of business acumen. And so I become the CEO, and financially things are tough, and I know that. But I had no comprehension of how bad they were. And so we went out and we met with the bank about, 4 or 5 or 6 weeks after I became the CEO. And I got a call from the board saying one of the members is going to meet me there, calls me the day before and says, hey, I'll meet you out in Toronto. We'll go meet with the bank. And I say, yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited about it. And he says, oh, and don't forget your suit. And I'm leaving the next day for Toronto. And it's, I'm like, I hang up. I'm like, oh yeah, no problem. I hang up and I call my wife and I say, I got to buy a suit. I don't even own a suit. So I rush to the mall, bought the suit too big. I fly out and meet with the bank. And they say things like, hey, we got your back, and, things aren't good, but, we're going to support you. And literally, I don't know what it was, 5 weeks from them, about 10 weeks from the time I became CEO, or 12 weeks, I'm in a meeting with a client, and I step out to grab a coffee, and I open up my email, and I see this from the bank, and it says letter of forbearance. And I had no idea what that was, to be honest with you. So I started reading it, and long story short, turns out it was bad. We had to inject about $3 million in capital is what they were looking for, or find a new bank, or when our term came up in 4.5 months, they were going to call the loan, which would put us into foreclosure if we didn't have the money, which we didn't. And so all of these things, like Well, no one was going to put $3 million into the organization. We were losing money. Finding a new bank is really, really hard for a business when you're losing money. And and
We're
so
not
and so
lining up to serve you.
yeah. So the logical conclusion was that we were going to be be bankrupt or foreclosed on in 4.5 months. And for about a week, I was freaking out. Like, and I wasn't telling anyone. I'm talking to the board, and and they're helping to try and figure some stuff out. But I was really, my ego was just flaring. I was like, oh my god! Like now I took this role, and I'm going to be the person that was known that bankrupt the company, and it was all about me. And about a week after we got the letter, I woke up and I hadn't been sleeping much. Like I had a lot of stress and anxiety waking up in the middle of the night. And on a Tuesday morning, about a week after I got the forbearance letter, I woke up and instead of being scared, I was like, wait a minute, I've been thinking about this all wrong. I was like, I've been praying for this. I knew the thing that I did know is that we had it in the beginning. We had an amazing culture, and in spite of the fact that we maybe didn't have a lot of business acumen, we were successful. And I was looking for a way to rally our team quickly to rebuild our culture. And I knew that our company rallies around crisis better than any company in the world. Like I would stand and defend that position. And there is no bigger crisis than we're going to be bankrupt in 4.5 months. And I was like, wait a minute, this is a gift. And I coined it the gift of forbearance. And I literally got up that morning and I spent the week traveling to all the branches, and I went and talked to people in the field, and I had coffee with them in their towns, at their houses. I told them to bring their spouses. I went to all of the branches, and I said basically the same thing. I said, hey, most of you know me. I took the CEO role and I'm way over my head, and I'm going to need a lot of help. And then I said, and I know you feel like we don't care, and I understand that. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that we screwed this up. We never meant to. And we do care, and I'm going to do everything I can to try and prove that. And there's one more thing I need to let you know. Last week, we got a letter of forbearance, and I don't know how to explain it very well, other than to tell you that, if we don't do a lot of things right in the next 4.5 months, then there's probably not going to be a Surepoint. So I want you all to know so that you can make decisions that are best for you and your family. I said, however, I've decided to stay, and I hope you stay. And if you stay, I have no idea how we'll get through it. I just know that we will. And on the other side of this, I promise you, I'm committed to building a better culture than we've ever had. And so I ran around and said all this stuff and told all the people, and people stayed. Most people stayed. And then I went to our vendors and I called them into the boardroom because we weren't paying our bills. We had no money. The bank also not only put us in forbearance, but also froze our line of credit and took money out of the bank. They move you into what's called a workout group. And so you get charged with fees and interest rates go up. And so all of this time, so we're out of money. And so we're getting cut off everywhere where we're buying supplies, and rightfully so. And so I was told, don't tell your vendors you're in forbearance. And I called the vendors in one at a time and was like, hey, we're having some troubles here, and told them the bank did this and this is where we are, but we're Surepoint. We're always going to get through it, and we will pay you, and we need your help, but we got put in forbearance and we need your support. And most of them supported us. And then I went to our clients and asked them for help, and asked them if they could quick pay some stuff and let them know our situation. And they helped. And I was telling you, I went to an office of an international company, and there's some ladies with a lot of influence in these organizations. They're a multi-billion-dollar organization. And I needed a check for over $1 million. And I was taking the invoice that day, and I said to the lady, can you please, Nancy, can you please get me this fast? And she said, how quick? I said, like 2 days. And she's like, it hasn't even been put in the system or approved. And I'm like, if you can get it to me by the end of the week, I will bring flowers and coffee to every woman in this office. And about 3 days later, I was coming with literally boxes of flowers and coffees. And I learned something through this. Give people permission to do the right thing. They will always do the right thing. And I learned that from before.
Can I add that too? Give people permission, yes, but a lot of our listeners have heard of the importance of transparency. But hearing about it and then actually hearing how that shows up, that is the most transparent approach I've ever heard, right? Of going to your employees and saying, here's the good, the bad, and the dirty, the ugly. Here's where we're at. I'm giving you all of the information so that you can make a decision based on your needs and your family's needs. I get that. Going to your vendors, going to your clients to get quick paid, rallying everyone to pitch in if they can. So giving them that permission in full transparency, providing them all the information they need to make a decision, and then trusting them to make the right one, because as you just said, when given permission to do the right thing, they will always do the right thing.
Yeah, and humans want to help humans. I've learned this, Lori. Humans always want to help humans. And so I've also learned through this, I'm very vulnerable with our team, and I try to be quite transparent. I also learned that it's not fair for me to vomit on them and leave the mess. I can't go and say, if I'd have gone and said, you know what, we're in forbearance and we have high potential to be bankrupt in 4.5 months, and I hope you all stay, and I have no idea what to do. And left there with that energy low and that energy of fear. I believed to my core that we could get through it. I had no idea. I talk about, meeting poor people in other places like Africa, and go and talk to them, and they know they're poor, but they have no idea how poor they are. And I knew we were in financial trouble, but I had no idea how bad. Like, I knew it was bad, but I had no idea how bad. I just had this belief that we could get through it. There was nothing that was going to stop us from succeeding. And I just believed it to my core. And the only way for us to do that was to have that energy of the entire team, was to have them believe in it too. And so I knew that we had the potential to rally around the crisis.
Okay, let's hear about that rally and what it looked like.
And so things started to get better. We got through it, got a new bank, got the support of our private equity group to get a new bank and get moving forward. And things started to go good. And then 2015 hit. And in 2015, the industry in Alberta tanked, and oil actually went negative. If you wanted to sell oil, you had to pay for someone to take it from you for the first time and the only time in the history of the industry. And so we just start getting some momentum, and bam, we're hit with this other crisis. I look at it now, and honestly, we survived that time because of the forbearance period, because of 2013. We had done some restructuring for our organization. So we were going into this thing pretty healthy, and at a time when lots of organizations had been growing because it was super busy in 2013, 2014, we had actually right-sized our business and said, let's be cautious here. We needed to be. So when 2015 hit, we came through that pretty good. Not great. We come out the other side of it, and we're still in business, which was the goal. And in 2018, things are starting to come back up again. And the private equity group got a hold of me and said, "Hey, Trev, we're the fund is running out. There's funds in different equity groups, and the fund is running out, and we're going to list Surepoint." And I was actually relieved because I was going to go do something else. I wasn't sure what yet, and I had a really nice exit clause in my contract. And so I said, "Okay, no, I appreciate you letting me know, and I'll start kind of thinking about this." And the next day, I called them back and said, "Don't do a sim. Don't list it yet. Let me talk to the team and see if they want to buy it back." And at this time, there was me and one other original who had moved on after, but. I went to 15 people in the organization and said, "Hey, Winters is selling us. Do you want to buy Surepoint back?" And everybody said yes. And so I said, "Well, I will do it with you, but there's one caveat: only if you're all open to us becoming an employer-owned organization." And it was an easy yes. Everyone said yes. So we get the help of a small private equity group out of Alberta and an individual investor, and we come together and we buy this thing back again. And so we've got Surepoint back, and so exciting. It's such an exciting time, and the industry is starting to pick up, and we're doing well, and we end up 2019 is pretty good, and we go into 2020. In April of 2020 was supposed to be the biggest month we'd ever had. We were poised to have the highest revenue ever, and all of a sudden this thing called the pandemic hits, and it was like, oh my God. Oh, yeah. And I mean, back to 2013 feeling again, 15 people that I love invested their money in this organization, and a whole bunch of other people did too, through private equity, and another person who put a large amount of money in himself to help us do this. And I'm thinking, Oh, like, and we took on a lot of debt to buy the business back. We leveraged it pretty high again. And now this thing happens. And I'm thinking we're toast. Like, we don't have the money to get through this. But I ended up being locked up for about 21 days in an apartment because I had a sore throat and runny nose, and COVID was just becoming a thing.
Yeah.
Everybody was locked down, and it actually ended up being a really good thing for me. I was on a few peer groups, virtual peer groups, and I was, how do you get through this? How do you get through the pandemic? And all organizations, every single one of them, and leaders are talking about the same thing: conserve capital, reduce costs. Which in our case, in most cases, it was let people go. And so me and our team spent about 2 weeks sort of finalizing a plan. And it was, we got to reduce overhead. And so we have to let some folks go. So we had a list together, kind of went around and around with it, finalized it on a Friday morning, and decided that we would start to let people go Monday, Tuesday of the following week. And Friday night around 6:30 or 7 o'clock, I called our CFO and our one VP and said, don't let anyone go next week. And they were like, huh? I'm like, no, don't let anyone go. I said, we don't have enough information to make a good decision here right now. We don't know if this is going to last 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years. We don't know if half the population is going to die, or everyone's going to die, or no one's going to die. The only thing we know is this, that everybody is being told to stay in their houses. People can't go see their parents and their families. They can't go on dates with their spouses. They can't go with their buddies and have beers. The kids can't swipe on Tinder. Nothing is normal at all. And everybody is full of fear. Everybody either fear that somebody they love is going to die or get sick, or financial insecurity. Everybody has fear. And I said, we have a playbook to go back to in 2013 when we were screwed and looked like things were as dire as they could be. We went to the team and we asked them for help, and they helped us. And I said, in 2013, we went on a mission to prove that caring was a competitive advantage in life and business, and certainly in our industry. And we rebuilt Surepoint on a foundational core value of caring. I said, we are never going to get a better opportunity to prove we care than right now. And I said, so Monday we are going to have a town hall, and we'll have a series of town halls, and we will tell everybody this. We've made a decision not to let anyone go yet. And we're going to run this thing as long as we can, right to the edge of the cliff, and hopefully not bankrupt our business. If we do need to let people go, we will let everybody know in a town hall prior to that it's coming. But our goal is to get everybody through this. We want to keep as many people for as long as we can. And at the end of the year, if you make it to Christmas and you're in your same house and you have a present under the tree for your kid, then we'll consider that a win. And so that's what we did. So we go out and we tell everyone, this is what we're going to do. And we think that we're doing the right thing, and it feels pretty good. And we actually had kind of forecasted that our revenue would possibly drop by 40%. It dropped by 60, a little over 60 actually for a while. So we're doing this, and we get a few weeks in and realize that, some people are coming and asking to be laid off because they're not making any money. And if we laid them off, they could go on to CERB. And it hit me that
just really for context, sorry Trev, I don't want to step in, just for context, is that you had a lot of like hour-based paid individuals who, if they're not working, then they're not annual salaried employees.
Yeah, 100%. Like the largest majority of our folks get paid when they go to work on equipment in the field, and now there's no work to do and they're hourly, so they get paid. And about the time now we're agonizing about this and trying to figure out, how do we sort this out? We found out that we qualified for the Canadian wage subsidy program. And so I was in my office, I was back home. I got out of the apartment that I'd been quarantined in, and I was back home, and I'm in my office and I have a napkin, I'm having a coffee and a pen, and I read about this and I'm writing this down. And I was like, hey, what if, and I was like, what if we could afford to pay all our people and we could guarantee everyone a paycheck? So I called our CFO And I said to him, hey, how do you feel about this? What if we guaranteed everybody a paycheck? What if we guaranteed every first year $2,500 and every journeyman $5,000? And so second year get $3,000, and third year $3,500. And he was like, well, that's great, but we can't afford it. And I said, yeah, do the math. I think we can. I said, I've written it down on a napkin, and I literally had it. And I said, here's what I need. If we can do it, will you support it if we can find a way? Because without his support, I'd have never got it past the board. And so he said, yeah, if we can afford it, I'll support it. So I go to the board. I get a very similar reaction, like, you're really nice, but this is crazy and you can't afford it. And I said, I know, but what if we could? If we could afford it, would you support it? And they said, yes. So got together with about 20 of our team, 25 maybe, and virtually, and said, hey, everybody knew we were keeping everyone, and it felt good. It was a value-based decision. And so said to all our folks, hey, how do you feel about us doing this, guaranteeing all our people a paycheck? And everybody said yes, like everybody. And then I said, well, there's one problem. We can't afford it. The way that we're structured right now, we just can't afford it. And what I'm about to ask might be the most meaningful thing that you'll ever do in your career. And if anybody in this room, anybody on this call says that they can't do it, it's a safe place. We won't do it. We'll find another way to get through this. But what I'm proposing is this, and everyone is going to have to sacrifice, and it's not going to be fair. I'm willing to give up 50% of my pay for the duration of the wage subsidy program. So I said, basically everybody knew how much I made. And I said, so that's the new base. If you're $1,000 over that or $30,000 over that, you have to come down to that number. And the significance of this is that most of our team was in their 40s, early 40s or younger. Our two VPs and our CFO were in their 30s. Those three gave up 30 to 32% of their pay. Our managers gave up 15 to 20, and the rest of the organization gave up 10% of their pay so that we could keep everybody. And they did that for 7.5 months. And Cam and I did ours for 9 months. It proved to me again that give people permission to do the right thing, they will do the right thing. And the sacrifices that they made for each other, it will go down as the proudest moment in my career, without a doubt.
Let's just talk about how that solidified that sense of community, how that solidified that sense of having to focus on collective outcomes, collective results, and the good of all rather than the good of one. It moved them away from that very, kind of self-centered way of approaching their daily work, and forced them automatically to relinquish that and to adopt a collective good.
It did, and it created an energy force. I tell people that Surepoint has a heartbeat, and if you go into one of our offices, you can feel it. And I believe that that was the start of something special. And so now we're paying people. There's not a lot of work going on, and then we got challenged with the task of how do we engage people, because we were hearing how our culture was eroding. And I'd heard that from lots of organizations. You can't get together and have beers and play ping pong and do it, no cooler talk, none of this stuff, right? And we were big on events and doing things. And so I said to our team, look, don't squander this opportunity to build a better culture. You're the best at this. Find a way to build a better culture. Let's use this as a catalyst. And so our VP of marketing, he's a brilliant guy and a great friend, and he came up with an idea to run a master chef cooking class. And so for 40 weeks in Surepoint, we ran this class every Wednesday. Might have been 42 weeks. And every Wednesday, somebody'd send a recipe on Sunday. Everybody would make it Wednesday, take 30 minutes, and then virtually eat, have a glass of wine or beer together and eat. And at the end of the pandemic, and when we had done the final class, we decided to professionally publish a cookbook called the Surepoint Cookbook and Master Chef's Cookbook. And then we sold all the copies, and we gave the money to an organization in Edmonton called Santa YAG that feeds the homeless during the holiday season. And about 20 of us showed up and made soup and sandwiches and went and handed them out. And they did something similar in Grand Prairie the following year. And one of the things was we had another thing that we had done was we had a magician comedian named Matt Gore lined up to come to one of our Christmas parties in Grand Prairie. And of course, can't get together, so we end up having to cancel it. And we told Matt to keep his deposit, and when things opened up, we'd just book him again. And so anyway, he was starting a virtual show, and so I got a hold of him and said, "Hey, would you do a virtual one for our company? That, like, not just Grand Prairie, now our entire company and families could be a part of it." And he said, "Yeah, absolutely." And then I called him a few days later and said, would you be okay if we opened it up to the entire world for free? Like, we'll pay you, and what would you charge us? And he comes back and says, "Yeah, I'll do it." And he comes back with a number which was way too low. So anyway, we did a magical Christmas with Surepoint with Matt for 2 years in a row. And so a couple of years after the pandemic was over, I was at a conference with two of our folks, and Matt was the entertainer, and he comes onto stage and he sees us out in the audience, and he's like, "Hey, there's my Surepoint family." And he tells them what we did. He tells them that we opened this up to the world. And he said that in those two nights that we did that, the two events, we had over 10,000 viewers had logged in to watch this. And we were getting messages from people from around North America during the shows, after the shows, thanking us. And we started to realize we were making a difference. And as I said, we care is our foundational core value. And our team launched a We Care Days during the pandemic. Our folks started to go out and look for people in the communities that were suffering, that needed help. And then, like, themselves and the organization, we would rally around that. And now we run a We Care Days for a week in September every day. When every branch gets to pick a day of the week, I think it's the first week of September, and they get a budget of $2,500. Not a lot, but they can do anything with it. The only caveat is it has to be used for spreading random acts of kindness in their community. And so the first We Care Days we did, we got Tim Hortons coffee cards, and we stood out giving people free coffees in the drive-thrus. And there's a lot of mistrusting people, like they lock the door when you walk up to them. But what was more actually, amazing and inspiring, and maybe sad, is people would cry when you give them a free coffee. They would drive through the drive-thru, and they would come back and get out and give hugs and want to get pictures. And our staff now, they get We Care shirts, and they've really blown this thing up. They wear it. I mean, they rally around this thing, and that was something that came during the pandemic. And then we launched the Someday to Today challenge that was inspired by the poem Someday to Today.
Poem that you shared last time. Yeah. So tell us a bit more about that.
And so at a time where, we were hearing about all this sort of negativity in the world and a lot of toxicity, and there were some really, really, really tough and challenging and sad things that happened through those years, for sure, around the world. And there was a lot of suffering. But I would always say that, fear was spreading, but so was love. I saw that love was contagious. And in our organization, in our communities, there was more and more and more and more love. And so it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Your Sunday to Today challenge. Can you just share with the audience? Because I feel like we got into the poem, and then we kind of made a promise at the end that we would share a bit more context around that and what it entailed. And I remember there was one of the powerful stories that you shared offline that I would love for you to share online, in terms of the difference, giving themselves permission to change someday into today.
Yeah, someday to Today was actually a buddy of mine, one of my best friends, and somebody I love with my whole heart. I work with him. He's a VP with Surepoint. I was down in Calgary with him in 2016 in the summer, and I was going to drive. He lives down there, and I was down for meetings. I was going to drive home that afternoon. And instead, his girlfriend was going out with some friends, and so he said, "Hey, why don't you stay and we'll go for dinner and go to this place called Princess Island Park and throw a Frisbee around and go for a run." We're both pretty active. So I meet him there, and we're there 10 minutes, and he's complaining of a headache, and he never gets sick at all. And then he starts to say that he's feeling dizzy. So we sit down at this picnic table for a few minutes, and I say to him, "Hey, let's just go for dinner. Like, you're not feeling good." And he's like, No, let's go for a walk. Let's not run. Let's go for a walk. Sure. So we start up this little hill onto this path that we're going to walk on. And I'm ahead of him, and I hear him start to scream, and it makes a noise. I can't even explain it. But I turn around, and he's on his knees holding his head like this, and he's screaming. And I'm like, Marty, you okay? And literally, I don't know, a minute later, he's flat and he's shaking bad, convulsing, and he rolls down this hill and he's face down. So I run down after him and I roll him over and quickly realize that he's not breathing. He's got no pulse. And so I call 911, and they're angels, by the way, and I start to administer CPR on him. And about 3.5 minutes till the first aid responders get there, and they intubate him and they bring him back to life. And they get him to the hospital. And long story short, Marty ends up fine. They never really find out why. They never found out what happened. And it hit me, Lori, that later it hit me that I watched him take his last breath. I literally watched this human being that I love take a breath in and a breath out and no more breaths. And he didn't have time to call his mom and say, I love you. And he didn't have time to tell his girlfriend that he loved her. And he didn't have time to tell me that Mark owed him $20 to make sure and collect. Like, there was no time for anything. He was just dead. And it hit me. He's 36. He's a super healthy guy. And about a few weeks after that had happened, I got a call from a family friend who said, hey, Dad's in the hospital and in ICU. And as soon as the family gets here, we're going to unplug him. And so the guy who was in the room was named Brian, and he was a mentor of mine and had got me into the trade. And he was 62 years old. And so I went to his service, and his brother-in-law gave the eulogy, and he said at the end, Brian and I were going to go and do all these things someday. We're going to go golf all these golf courses in North America and go to the original 6 NHL hockey teams and watch them play and do all this stuff. And both of them were financially, very financially well off. And Brian was going to retire a few years earlier, but decided to work till January of that year. And in, I think it was May, he passed away. And at the end, when the guy giving the eulogy said, we were going to do all these things someday, and now we're not going to get a chance to. I hope that you leave here and change your someday to today. And the next morning I wrote up and I woke up and wrote a poem called Someday to Today. And we shared that internally. I shared that poem internally. And at the time I hadn't told many people I even wrote poetry. And the team exploded it. They started to do a Someday to Today challenge internally. And it was, what's something you're going to do someday? Put it on a sticky, put it on a wall in the office. We'll take a picture of it. When you do it, we'll do a draw every month for $100 for each branch. And at the end of the year, we did a draw for $1,500 to help somebody make another Someday to Today. And we started to see people do these things with their lives that were important. Nobody said, I want to work 14 more hours this week, by the way. Not one of the Someday Todays. It wasn't on the wall. One guy said he had always promised his dad he'd go kayak fishing on the ocean with him, so he went. And we had a lady who came to me and said, I have a Someday to Today, but I just I don't want to put it on the wall. And I asked her why, and she said, why? I was separated at birth from my sister, and I have a sister that I've never met. And I'm like, oh, you want to find her? And she said, I actually know where she is. I'm afraid to reach out to her. And after some conversation, she decided to reach out to her. And she found out that she lived very parallel lives. They got separated at birth. They both got married young. They both had 2 kids. They both got divorced. Neither of them ever remarried. And so she ended up moving to the city. They'd lived hours apart their entire lives. And she ended up moving to Calgary to be with her sister and her family. And so we started to see that this stuff was making a difference in people's lives. And during the pandemic, we launched a challenge to organizations and some companies, Sutton Group Results. They're 2 organizations, one from Saskatchewan and one from Edmonton. And they just did remarkable things with this. And so, this was all due to the pandemic. And so we found some ways, in spite of the fear, the challenges, the sadness, the heartache, the pain, that was all real. Like, I don't minimize that at all. It was so real. Absolutely. We found a way to find some light.
Absolutely. One of the last things, because we are almost at time, and one of the last things I want to share with our listeners, who themselves are often CEOs, decision makers, let's really talk about the business and how some of those decisions and investing in kind of nurturing that culture and nurturing the relationships and nurturing the trust within that team, that transparency, all of the initiatives, how it led to growth for the business itself.
Yeah, so we ended up on the other side of the pandemic. This story started to get out, and the industry started to pick up again. And we bought a company and merged it in. And I believe our culture was a big part of the successful merger. And then bought another little group that was owned by the same group and brought them in, and then had positioned ourselves to do some growth. And the story got out that about what we had done and the culture that we had created here at Surepoint. And we started to attract a lot of people, and our growth went exponential. Actually, we grew 125% in 1 year, and most of that came in 9 or 10 months. And we hired 175 people, approximately 175 in 9 months, in a time where there was a major fight for people. And then we've had lots of our folks be headhunted, and they've stayed and been offered gross amounts of money actually to leave, and they have stayed. We rolled out the employee share ownership program after the pandemic was over, which has been a huge help to attracting really good people. And we have 130 some employee owners in Surepoint now. We were going to roll it out as soon as we had bought the company, but once the pandemic hit, we decided not to put any more money at risk. And now that is going well. And the employees own about 38% of the company now, I believe it is, high 30s. And each year we add more and more folks to it. And so, what we did and the reason why we did it, I believe the universe honored that. The growth actually ended up causing us, financial instability. It was too much, too fast, and so we've come through that. We're working ourselves through that now. We had to stop hiring people because we just couldn't. We couldn't afford to keep hiring them. And again, at that time, our vendors supported us. We're like, hey, now it's a different problem, but we need some help for a few months again. And so we've just always been blessed by working with good human beings who help and support us.
What I'm hearing from this entire story, and it's so impressive how the company journey is just as inspiring and impressive as the personal journey. And I think they're closely linked and have to do with the person who's at the helms of the entire company and that team of leadership that were willing to, take cuts to their own salary, for example, for the greater good of the organization. But what I'm hearing in all of this story is, if you invest in that culture, when you think about, how it feels like that comedian said, oh, this is my Surepoint family, that family. Ultimately, I've been asked, I don't know how many times, how would you describe culture? Culture is akin to a family. It's your work family. It is where you feel you can be your authentic self. It is where you can truly show up and commit and hold each other accountable. And it sounds like you've created that culture. But that culture also makes or breaks employees in that they're being offered something better elsewhere, but they've made it so you're training them up and you're investing them to the point that they could go elsewhere, but you've created such a family feel that they don't want to go elsewhere.
Right.
And that is the dream. That is what most companies need to aspire to do. But I'm also hearing that also pays off because you were able to, in creating that environment, you've created a sense of resiliency, not only within your company, but within all stakeholders who have worked with you in the past, your vendors, your clients, who are willing to help you weather that storm. And that's what creating that culture, that family feel, that is 100% what it leads to, because people understand that this is all par for the course, and that as long as we all trust in each other and we're fully transparent and we support each other, we're all going to make it out in the end. What's going to happen from now until that end, unknown, but we're all in it together, and we're going to, and we've seen that same, we're in this together with the pandemic. It became a global culture of supporting each other. It sounds like you have been able essentially to replicate that feel on a micro level within Surepoint. So kudos to you, Trev, and to your story and to everything that you have done. As we are at time, I'm asking if there's one final nugget of wisdom that you would like to leave with our audience.
I'd like to around culture, and people ask me a lot about culture and how do you build culture and what's a good culture. And I say culture is a feeling. And when I get challenged on businesses can't be like families, I'm like, family is a feeling. And culture is a feeling, and our culture is not going to work in every organization. And then there's people that don't align, that their frequency doesn't attune to what we do. However, culture is a feeling. Don't overcomplicate it. And just like family, I love some people to the deepest parts of my heart and soul, like family, that aren't my blood family.
Absolutely.
And that is it. Create the feeling that you want to create in your organization, and good things will come.
I love it. Absolutely love that. If people want to continue connecting, we will make sure to share all of your socials on the show notes. So folks, visit that section to connect with Trev. Also, if you are interested in one day working for Surepoint, we'll make sure to share all of the careers website and all of that fun jazz too, so people can connect and put themselves out there to be part of that eventual family down the line. Well, folks, as I mentioned in every episode, I hope that you've enjoyed our show. I ask that you listen to everything you've heard today and you spend some time reflecting on one action that you could do today from what you've heard, one goal that you could set, and actions you can take to get you one step closer to that goal, and go do that. Well, folks, thanks for joining us for yet another enriching conversation. To hear more about today's guest, make sure to check out the links in the description of this episode. Want to continue the conversation? Then head on over to our social media platforms, all of which are also linked in the description, to keep it going. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss another valuable episode.